All right, thanks for tuning in, everybody. This is an episode that the two of us have been looking forward to since Rogue One came out last year. In this episode, we're jumping into finally The Last Jedi, which I think this is the first of the new Star Wars movies that we've seen together in the theater.
It is.
We did a Horror Heads outing. I was kind of hoping that this was going to become our annual Christmas episode-ish tradition, talking about a Star Wars movie, but I think this is going to be the last year we're actually going to see them in December, maybe. Last Jedi just came out it depends on how you look at it. It either came out on Thursday night or came out on Friday. We're recording this on a Sunday. And I'm going to go ahead and put the warning out there, even though if you didn't read any of the show notes as you were clicking through to this show, this episode is going to be filled with spoilers. Before we get into anything with the movie, if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want any spoilers, stop listening immediately. Spoilers ahead. That's all I'm going to say. I went and saw it on Thursday night when it opened up here in town, and then the two of us got together on Saturday afternoon. And I'll go ahead and say, because I kind of had a similar feeling from you, that you felt sort of the similar way that I felt when I saw it on Thursday. And this is going to go out there to anybody that's listening to this. If you've only seen it one time and you're kind of like, I'm not sure what to think about that. There's a lot of people that I do know that from online and whatever that went and saw it one time and were like, oh man, that was amazing. That was great. But there's a lot of people that went and saw it one time and were like, what happened? I don't know how to feel about that movie. Go see it a second time. Because when I walked out of the theater on Thursday night, I was like, okay, some of that was really cool, but some of that was like, what the hell was, what? And then when we walked out of the theater yesterday, because we went with you and your two boys, and all three of you were like, I think I like it, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure what happened. I think a second viewing is a must for this one.
So did you like it more than the second time?
Oh, yeah. Now I'm all on that was a great movie train, even though there was still a couple of, what the hell moments in it. But overall, it's great.
Pretty much every Star Wars movie I've seen in the theater, I saw Empire and Return of the Jedi when I was really little. I mean, I was just a little kid back then. And then, the prequels, the prequels get a lot of slack, and at this point in life, I look back at them and I never really go back and revisit them. And then when I do, when my son has one on or something, we're watching it, you can see the dialogue's kind of terrible. But regardless of that, what I was getting at is that I saw every single one of them in the theater, including Phantom Menace. And I walked out of the theater liking them all. I remember even Phantom Menace coming out and being like, that was great, and just, I accepted it for what it was, even with Jar Jar and all the issues it had, and it just didn't really bother me at the time. I guess my mind was accepting of, what they had. Attack of the Clones, same way, and then Revenge of the Sith, I thought was the best of the prequels. And then comes along, all these years later, The Force Awakens, and I absolutely loved that movie. Totally was, I guess you could say, blown away with it. It was one of those movies I've seen, several times already on Blu-ray. If I want to watch a Star Wars movie, it's pretty much the one I pick and I toss in. And I'm kind of, I guess, one of the stranger Star Wars fans, in the sense that a lot of people enjoyed Rogue One better, and I thought that was a good movie, but I would much prefer Force Awakens over it. So, needless to say, The Last Jedi, I was really looking forward to this film, and I had seen a few movies this year that I just wasn't that excited about, or that turned out to be not as good as I had hoped. And so The Last Jedi was kind of that was the movie. It was kind of my movie. Come December, this is the one I've been waiting for. And so I saw it, and it was kind of weird because I had sort of like a numb feeling to a lot of things about it. Like there were certain things I thought were really good, but then there were things that I was not happy about. And then like when we all left the theater, I just had this sort of like, I got to really think about this kind of mindset, which it's kind of weird because I've never had that at a Star Wars movie. Even like I said, like the ones that most people don't like the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones. I walked out of those like pretty excited about it. Like, yeah, that was cool. This time around, I just walked out like, I got to think about that movie. We talked about it at the restaurant we went to afterwards. And then I thought about it in the evening when I got home, and I talked about it with my sons again, and we talked about it a little. And I watched some YouTube videos and listened to some reviews. And today, after having another day to kind of absorb everything, I have to say that I did like the film. I guess I wasn't blown away the way I was with The Force Awakens, but at the end of the day, I did like it. And I loved Luke's portrayal. And Kylo Ren, as I've said, I think in the previous review that we talked about, he's like my favorite villain now. I really, really like that character. I think he's my favorite, like, new character out of all of them. Now, there's a lot of things wrong with The Last Jedi, and there's a lot of problems with it. But ultimately speaking, I think I'm going to... I definitely lean towards liking it and just being like, yeah, I enjoyed that film.
That's how I felt on Thursday when I left, because I was just kind of like, because my wife loved it, and I was just like, oh man, I mean, and we'll get into all of this, but I was like, oh, this one thing that really bugged me, and then this other thing was kind of like, well, why did they do that? And then this other thing, and I was like, what? Come on! And then, but then you had this thing, and I was like, that was great. I mean, that was like one of the greatest things I've ever seen in a movie. And then you had this other thing that was amazing. Before we even went and saw it again, like on Friday, I was kind of like, that was a pretty good movie. I think I liked it a lot. When we went and saw it again yesterday, the stuff that did bug me, even though it bugged me a little bit, didn't nearly bug me as much as it did the first time. And so I kind of was able to overlook it. And then I was like, oh man, this is great. Because even though it's, almost a 3-hour movie, even the second time sitting through it, it was like, oh, it's over already. Damn, that was quick. I'll probably go sit in the theater at least one more time. Like I was telling my wife when I got home yesterday, I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I went and saw it a second time, because I don't think if I would have went and seen it a second time, by the time it came out like on video and stuff, I probably would have been like, oh, that movie's horrible.
For me, it was like basically every scene with Luke Skywalker or Kylo Ren and Rey, I really, really like. That kind of reminded me back of even like with the original trilogy, where they always had these kind of multiple stories going at the same time. You had the space battle, then you had Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader's story, and then you had Han Solo's story. I mean, specifically, let's going back to like Return of the Jedi. I remember like every time, they had the battle between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, the lightsaber battle in the Emperor's throne room, and then they had the space battle going on, and they also had Han Solo and Leia on Endor. So they had these three things going on, and then like the one as a kid I always wanted, like it was like every time they would jump to one battle, it was always like the Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader battle was the main focus for me. I was like, that's the one I want to see. And it kind of was like that again this time around, because they do that where they've got these separate things going on. Anything with Luke Skywalker, Rey, and Kylo, I was 1,000% on board. It was just, I enjoyed it. I loved it. I loved how Snoke like totally like berates Kylo and like, tells him to stop wearing that stupid mask, and all that stuff was great. And it just kind of really built on the Kylo character. And Luke, I love that, like, like the grizzled old guy, like, he's basically Yoda in this movie, like kind of goofy and weird and hermity and living, and like up on this island by himself. And I like Mark Hamill did such an incredible job too. I was like pretty surprised, how well he portrayed Luke again at this, at this point in his life. And I love that character. So those are my favorite things about this film. Some of the worst things about this movie, and I've read a lot of reviews and I've watched a lot of reviews, and I'm in complete agreement that the whole casino scene and the where Finn and Rose go off on this adventure and then they free all these animals, and that whole thing right there, they could have taken all of that out, and I think the movie would have been a much better film.
Yeah, that was one of my complaints when I saw it, and it still is that whole casino thing, because one of the things that I mentioned to you guys after we saw the movie last night, when you guys were kind of like, I don't know. When I saw that, when they got to that, whatever that planet was, the first thing that popped into my head was like, wait, hold on. Are we in the prequels again? What the hell is this? Because that's exactly what it looked like. That was the exact feel that it had. I was so certain that all of a sudden we were going to be going down that path. Thankfully, it's the 10 or 15 minutes that part of the movie, and then it's over. And then it never really went back to that feel until the very end of the movie. Because it was weird, the lighting was different. It seemed like the camera shot was different. And then even, the all of the character, everything was just different. It just had a whole different feel to it. And it was, I don't know if it was paying homage to the prequels or what the deal was, but I mean, all the heavy CGI and just, everything.
Oh yeah.
It was it was gross.
Yeah, it did not work. And the scene where they're riding off on the animal, that was just to me was really terrible. It was oh, you can't go back to this type of thing. It just reminded me of like you said, the prequels, and then the whole kind of, we need to free the animals, from captivity. That whole thing just seemed really, I don't know, and I know it's Disney that owns it, but it seemed like something you'd see in a Dumbo movie or something, or it didn't work for Star Wars. And then the kids, the little kid, who's and I really like the idea. I love the story idea that all the rich people in the galaxy are financing both sides of the war. I thought that was great. It just showed the rebellion and the First Order are both getting financed by the same people. And I thought that was cool, and that could have been expanded upon, but it's just the whole way they did it was just terrible. So it's almost if they would have cut all of that out, and then even Benicio del Toro's character, I forget, DJ, I think his name was, but he was, the programmer or the code breaker, whatever they called him. I don't know. He seemed kind of a wasted opportunity too, because I kind of pictured him as being the Lando in this film.
Yeah, I wonder if he'll come back. Before we go to another thing, because that was one of the things too with that. I thought his character was a little bit wasted in this, just because of who he is and the ability that he has. Yeah, and that character I thought was kind of cool. Okay, he's kind of, a bit of a smart ass, but you would, a little bit like Lando, and just this scumbag guy, and and I'm sure I haven't read any of these reviews that have said this, but I'm sure there's people out there oh man, you're just copying Empire again. Come on.
Right.
Because there was certain things that I got, throughout the movie, which some of it I'm sure was paying homage, and some of it was okay, well, we're going to do the same thing, the whole Kylo Ren to Rey, reaching his hand out and join me, and her no, again, that whole kind of Empire kind of feel to it. But the other character that I am really disappointed that they didn't utilize more than at least I felt that they should have was Phasma. I mean, she's in this movie and I actually counted yesterday, she is in this movie for less than 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then she's gone. And I don't know if they're trying to do a whole, like, Boba Fett thing with her. Like, oh, we're going to have this awesome character, and then, but you know, we're going to make this, you know, lure about her, but we're not going to give her any screen time. Trust me, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting, because they could have done more with her, but they chose to really kind of keep her really minimized in both this one and The Force Awakens.
Right, and I don't know if they're doing this on purpose or if they're doing it just to piss people off, but you have all of these characters, you know, Phasma, Snoke's another one, even Rey to a certain extent, to where you're like, oh, that character's cool as hell. Don't worry, we're not going to tell you anything about him. We're not going to give you any backstory at all. And, oh, yeah, she's dead.
That didn't bother me terribly much, because, I don't know, like, Phasma, like, to me was sort of overhyped, like, as the next Boba Fett or whatever. And to me, like, even the costume, you know, it's basically just a Stormtrooper costume with, you know, turned chrome. It was kind of like, I don't know, they always seemed like it was just a little bit unoriginal. Like, oh, okay, well, it's all right. She's got the Stormtrooper outfit on, only she's the chrome version. So, like, I was never totally on board with her to begin with, even in the first one. But, yeah, you know, I guess, like, there was so much going on in this movie that, like, characters like her kind of get pushed to the wayside, which is another thing I was going to bring up was, like, R2-D2 and C-3PO are really pushed to the wayside in this film. I mean, they really are pretty much, like, you know, not even hardly part of the narrative, you know. Like, there's only one scene, really, with R2-D2, and then C-3PO scenes are all just kind of limited or just in the background where, like, now, obviously, like, BB-8 is, like, the new droid that, like, the go-to droid, so. But it's almost like, why was R2-D2 and C-3PO even in the film? And Chewbacca, too, he was, like, kind of, sort of, like, tossed in just because of, you know, the character he is from his past, but he didn't really need to be in this movie. So there's some things like that were kind of strange, just because I think they shoved so much into it. You know, maybe it would have been okay if Chewie wasn't in this movie. Maybe it would have been okay if C-3PO wasn't, because it's not like he really added to the film.
The thing with the droids, too, which is a little bit of a, not disappointment, but a little odd, is, you know, it seemed like all of the droids that were introduced in this movie, the new droids, they're pretty much all BB-8, just different colors.
Yeah, that seems to be like the new astromech droid is now like a ball with a head.
Yeah, which is kind of like, oh, come on, guys. I mean, you know, the original Star Wars trilogy had, 955 different droids, and now it's like, oh, here's BB-8, he's black. Nope, now he's blue over here. Oh, here's a red one.
Yeah, so, I mean, the movie definitely had a lot of issues, and one thing I want to bring up, too, because I know this was one of your issues, I think you told me, is the scene with Leia, you know, floating out in space. What were your thoughts on that?
Oh, man. Yeah, that was, and I think that's going to be probably unless it's explained in the next one, is the biggest what the hell moment of this movie. So the scene itself actually was kind of a powerful scene to begin with. So, you know, Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, comes up onto the cruiser and is going, you know, feels Leia's presence on the deck and is going to blast the deck, but then doesn't, whether, you know, she convinces him not to, or he's just like, oh, that's my mom, I can't do it. And then TIE fighters come in around him and blow the deck away. And and we see Leia sucked out into space, and then some stuff happens, you know, some more of the space battle happens. And then we loop back around and we see this CGI'd Leia floating in space, and she's getting all crystally and crusty. And then her hand starts, like, moving around a little bit. And then she force flies back to the ship, and Poe and everybody, like, lets her in, and then they take her to the med unit like nothing happened, which was kind of weird, too, because nobody's like, oh, hey, she's flying without a spacesuit through space. Oh, that happens every day. Whatever.
Yeah, it was a little off, wasn't it?
But that whole thing was just kind of, wait, what? How'd she survive in space?
Strangely enough, I wasn't particularly bothered by it. Like, I accepted it for what it was.
Really?
I thought she was going to be dead, you know, because I had heard that like Princess Leia had like a grand send off for this film, which I don't know where I heard that because she kind of really didn't. So that particular scene, oddly enough, did not bother me, and I'm not sure why, because I could picture that, like, why that should have bothered me, or maybe at least been a concern. But for whatever reason, when I watched it, it was like I kind of accepted it for what it was. But I certainly wasn't like emotionally attached to the scene, like where like, oh, this is great, she's back and she's floating and all this stuff. I just kind of accepted it for like, yeah, okay, well, that's what she's doing, and she's using the Force, and it didn't really bother me. I mean, it wasn't like, again, like it wasn't like a big impactful scene. I know that's one scene that really got a lot of flack, which is understandable because it really kind of odd and out of character.
Well, I think it would have been different if it was done differently. If it wouldn't have been like she's floating in space and she's turning into ice and then flies back, it would have been something different if like they would have shot the deck of the ship and blown up and she got sucked into space and like immediately like flew back. I think it would have been different then, because then you'd have been like, whoa, Leia can use the Force? That's awesome. But whereas, you know, where it was all of a sudden, you know, whatever, couple of minutes later, and you're like, huh? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And that's one of the things with this movie, which happens. I mean, I guess it probably happens in more Star Wars movies than this one. But there's a couple of different times in this movie where, like, people are exposed to open space, and it doesn't seem to be, like, any issue at all. Because, like, the scene with the bombers, you know, towards the beginning of the movie, when they're bombing that one, whatever they were calling that one ship with the big cannons on it, you know, they would open the bottom of the ship, and then, like, Rose's sister is just, like, laying, like, 5 feet away from the bottom of the ship with that thing open for however long that was. And, you know, and it's like one of those things when you think about it after, you're like, wait, how was she alive? That's kind of weird. But then I guess all the Star Wars movies do that in a sense, because always the bay where the ships are always at, there's always a big open door that goes right out into space, right from them.
Right.
So I guess in whatever galaxy that Star Wars is in, space doesn't kill you like it does in the Milky Way.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like that. There's a lot of issues with things. And I heard something too, like one of the issues with like Leia coming back to the ship, floating back, and well, how do they open the door? I guess one thing I read was that, well, there was like a shield over the ship or something like that. And
I'm kind of curious as what you thought about this too. I don't think this bugged you as much as it did me. But the only other like real issue that I had the first time I saw it was, and it didn't bug me as much the second time, and I think the reason actually why it didn't bug me as much the second time as it did the first time was because the theater that we saw it in the second time, I couldn't hear everybody laughing, but was all the one-liners that were in the movie.
Oh.
That to me, again, because, you know, I know that this is a Disney property now, but it felt like, you know, that was, those jokes and stuff belonged more in a Marvel movie, you know. I'd rather see that stuff in a Guardians of the Galaxy movie or an Iron Man movie than seeing Luke Skywalker toss his lightsaber over his shoulder and then, you know, essentially kind of kill the end of The Force Awakens. You know, you have this real serious moment, and all of a sudden he's just like, whatever, and throws the damn thing over his shoulder.
That part sort of bothered me a little bit, but as I've thought about it a little more, I've been a little more okay with it. I think the one-liner, the joking stuff that really kind of felt uncomfortable and weird to me was like at the beginning when Poe was doing that whole like radio thing over to General Hux. Yeah,
see, like that really kind of weird stuff was like, this is not a Star Wars movie. What are you doing? But
But one thing I found that was interesting, and like this has kind of helped my brain sort of, I don't know, rotate around with this film, was somebody I read recently said that they were trying to put their finger on this movie, what it reminded them of, and then they finally figured it out back in like from 1977 to or 1978 to 1986. Marvel released Star Wars comic books. And the person who was writing whatever I was reading, they said like this reminded them of what those comic books were like. It was like kind of like the Star Wars comic book version of the film. And I thought that was really interesting because it was like, oh, okay, yeah, because it takes away from, it doesn't flow like a typical Star Wars film would, but like all the weird stuff in this film really did kind of seem like, yeah, I could picture this like totally being like an old comic book, like all the stuff they tossed into this, and some of the dialogue and all of that. So that was kind of interesting.
Interesting. I have to go dig some of those old comic books up. I'm sure they're out there in digital form somewhere.
Yeah, I went on Marvel's website and they have a bunch of them, but I guess you have to be a member or like of their website to like look at them. So I didn't get to peruse each page, but I could picture that, like, just some of the characters and some of the dialogue and some of the situations seemed like, yeah, okay, that sounds like a sort of comic bookish type of scenario or whatever. Like even that sort of even helped me to kind of let go of the whole Finn and Rose subplot, because that to me didn't feel like the Star Wars movie typical stuff they would have, but I could see it like, yeah, okay, I could picture that being part of the comic book or something, and then whatever. So I sort of accepted it a little more because of that.
I didn't mind that as much as I know that there's a lot of people that kind of did for some reason. And like I was telling you, I know that my wife was hoping for that, or was thinking that Rey and Finn were going to become like a couple. I was like, oh, really? I don't see that at all. But, I mean, I actually, even though I know this was like a rumor a long time ago, but of anybody becoming a couple with Finn, I always thought it would have been Poe.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually, heard about that too. I probably would have been like rooting for that in this one a little bit more, because even at the beginning when, Finn wakes up and, Poe runs out and like, hey, buddy, hey, how's it going? And stuff like, oh, it'd be kind of cool if they like had like an embrace. That'd be okay, But sure. The thing that really developed in this movie, and I personally would like to see it develop more in the next movie, is the relationship between Ben Solo and Rey. I would love that. And like I was telling you yesterday, and this, if you don't agree with me, whatever, I don't care. But when they were in Snoke's throne room and they had the battle, Rey was like, okay, cool, yeah, Ben's flipped over to the light side and we're going to go and we're going to kick ass. And, Ben's like, hey, come and rule the galaxy with me. If they expand on that in the next movie, I'm all for it. And I don't care how you take it. You can go multiple ways with it, which, I mean, it's going to be the end of the trilogy, so they could flip sides. I would love to see Rey go to the dark side and Ben go to the light side. I would love to see them both go to the same side, whether it's to the light side or the dark side. Either way, it's fine with. I would be happy with either one of them, and I love those characters. And like you had said, with the Kylo Ren character, he is really getting close to being on the same level as Darth Vader. With me personally, I mean, because in this movie, you're just like, he is that villain you love. And not to hate, you just love. You're like, that guy kicks ass. He is a badass, and I know he's the bad guy, but that is a cool villain. He has got the look, he's got the weapons, he's got the moves, and he's like, the scar thing, even though I know, like, the scar isn't the same as it was in The Force Awakens, but, like, the scar coming up from his chest up to his forehead, like, that's badass. And I was hoping we were going to get a different lightsaber this time which I'm actually kind of surprised we didn't. Like an approved one. But even the lightsaber, you're like, that thing is badass. He's cool. And he cares for Rey. I mean, you know he does, but...
Yeah, I thought that was great. That was actually like where I kept... the most of my attention was there. And that those scenes like were so... You know, and you know, I know one of the big complaints was that Snoke is killed so quickly. Everything kind of changes at that point because, you know... But again, I think like... A lot of people are thinking in terms of the typical template for Star Wars films, like, you know, like Snoke being like the Emperor type character. Oh, he'll be around for all 3 movies, and you know they'll probably kill him off in the 3rd movie and whatever. But they didn't go that way, and that was kind of cool because you don't want. I mean, do you really want it to be like this? I mean, like the first one was like obviously we all talked about like it was kind of like the same structure as the original film, A New Hope. And this one really kind of shook it up a bit. So it's like, yeah, we're not going to have Snoke last through this and then through the next movie, and then we're going to have him be like the final guy and, you know, whatever. I mean, this could easily be, they could have done a trilogy where it basically just mirrored the original trilogy 100%. You know, like, oh, okay, now it's Kylo comes around and comes to the light side and kills Snoke or whatever, you know. I mean, that's already been done. So they really kind of have to change things up at this point. I guess, like, out of the whole film, you know, like we said, like, I love the Luke Skywalker scenes. I love the Kylo and Rey scenes. I think those are all great. I think that all that stuff works great. Not so big on the Finn and Rose scenes. I think that kind of took into an area that I wasn't totally excited about. And Poe, I still haven't fully jumped aboard his character for whatever reason. I mean, I guess... I think that might just because I'm like part of the original trilogy generation, you know. So I mean, he hasn't become like, he's not as special as like, you know, the 3 big names to me yet. Like it's like if something happened to him, I don't think I would be fully concerned about it. Like you know, like watching Han Solo die or even Luke's situation. But so I'm totally not fully invested in him for whatever reason. But with having said that, I guess my biggest disappointment in this whole film, outside of those things, was the death of Luke Skywalker. That I was not expecting, nor was I ready for, because it just sort of seemed too, I don't know, like, really? You're going to take him out? Okay. You know, like, I didn't want to see, like, every movie, like, oh, we're going to kill off the original characters in each film. What, you know? And that's kind of what obviously it seems like it has happened. And, you know, I'm hoping he returns for the 3rd movie in some capacity, either a ghost or whatever. But his ending and his, like, you know, okay, like I used the Force and it kind of like took so much energy from me, it just sort of killed me. I wasn't very fond of, and I've read some reviews that kind of took it both ways, and I still kind of lean towards, yeah, I'm not too happy about that.
I don't mind that he was killed off in this one. Or, well, he wasn't really killed off, but, you know, he died in this one. I wasn't really a fan of them kind of re-explaining the Force in the way that they did. It's kind of goes back to what we've talked about with, you know, some of the horror sequels when they go back and they're like, okay, so we're going to change the origin story of this just a little bit here. You know, this didn't happen, but this is actually what happened. Because I didn't get the whole... In a way, it almost reminds me of Stranger Things when you're watching Eleven use her powers and then she gets like a little bit of a nosebleed. Which she does it a little bit, but then, you know, you can tell, like, oh, the more I use this, the more draining it is to me. And it's almost like somebody at Disney was like, oh... Yeah, that's how the Force is too. Like the more you use it, it's more draining on your body, which is not how it's explained in any of the 6 other movies that are, you know, before this new trilogy came out. You know, it's a force that surrounds everything, and just some people have the ability to manipulate it. But it was never explained until this one. Like, oh, actually, if you use a little bit too much, it could kill you.
I didn't mind that too much. I don't know. I kind of would have liked Luke sticking around a little longer.
Yeah, I am actually surprised that even after Carrie Fisher passed away last year, that if they were going to do that, like, okay, we're gonna knock off, a main character in each movie, that they didn't manipulate it somehow to where she was the one who somehow died in this one, and then we had Luke until the next one, which I kind of get why he died, because with the way that everything that happened, Rey took the Jedi texts, and you're assuming she's going to start like a Jedi temple or something, study the texts, and, the way that this movie ended. But the other thing, too, with that is, with these Star Wars movies, and I know they kind of do this, this is kind of like a Disney thing, in a sense. I kind of wish that if you were going to make a series of movies, a trilogy, because that's the big thing now. It's been that way for a while, but if you're going to make a trilogy of movies, can you just let one person make the damn movies? Just J.J. Abrams or whoever. Okay, make 3 movies rather than, okay, J.J. is going to make the first one, and then we're going to bring this other guy in, and then J.J. is going to make the last one. Well, just have J.J. make all 3 of them. And then they can be somewhat consistent. Because, that was, like I was saying, that was the one thing that did kind of bug me with this one was, at the end of Force Awakens, Rey finds the island and she goes and finds Luke and here's your lightsaber. And then he was just kind of like, ugh. But in this one, he was just like, oh, whatever, and throws it over his shoulder. And then, it just kind of takes away a little bit of that to where, I get some of that is like, this new guy's like, oh, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that or whatever, but have a little consistency to it. Because now, J.J. Abrams is making the 9th one, and it's going to be a completely different feel to the movie again.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they take it. I'm actually looking forward to the final one. This one really changes things up, and it takes away that. One of the things about this movie that you got to give it credit for, whether you like it or not, is it does kind of take away what you would think would be the structure of the film. If you're like the first one being like the complete kind of carbon copy of the original Star Wars movie, and now this one isn't like an Empire Strikes Back where it leaves you in that same place. It's a kind of a different way that they took with this one. So how they're going to wrap it up will be interesting, but. Again, it remains to be seen, so we'll see what happens.
See, and I wonder with the way that this one ended, that final scene, if it wasn't so much even rolling it into the next trilogy, because again, this being a Disney property is, Disney's not like, okay, so we're going to make 3 movies and then we'll figure out what we're going to do next. Disney's like, okay, we're going to lay out the plan for the next 15 movies over the next 6 years or whatever. And then we'll do a phase 2, and then we're going to do a phase 3. And look at the Marvel movies. There's been like 20 Marvel movies in the past.
Oh yeah.
However many years. Totally. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start getting 2 or 3 Star Wars movies a year.
I wouldn't either.
We're getting to the point now to where we have 1 a year. And up to this point so far, we said this, I think, during the Rogue One episode, that when that movie was being promoted and was coming out, I wasn't really ever excited to see it. And I never really had the feel that it was a Star Wars movie until either like shortly before it came out or maybe until I actually saw it. But I remember like seeing it and I was like, oh man, this is great. These the Skywalker saga movies, the episodes movies, those so far I've been like excited to see, and I'm excited to see episode 9 when that one comes out in a couple years. But like again, the same thing with like Rogue One, we have Solo coming out in less than 6 months. We haven't seen any previews or anything for it yet. We've seen a couple stills, I guess. But, at this point, I'm kind of like, I'm not really excited for it. And I'm sure when it comes
Yeah.
out, I'll be like, "Oh, that was great." But I mean, I'm anticipating I'm going to get to a point with the Star Wars movies that I've gotten to a point with the superhero movies where it's just like, okay, I'm done with them. I'm sick of them.
Yeah.
I love Batman. I don't want to see a Batman movie.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I think I'm with you with that. Like, it's we might get a little bit of overkill with these, especially coming up with the next like Solo. I'm not particularly fond or excited about that one at all, really. So yeah, well, I guess we'll have to just see how it goes, and it's kind of again, it's like it's Disney now, so it's a whole different mindset.
So we've talked about a couple of things. So what was your thoughts of Yoda being in this one?
It was kind of funny because I liked that it was the old puppet Yoda, but it didn't really. It was fine, I guess I would say. It wasn't like a really big emotional. Oh, cool, Yoda's back. It was just like, oh, okay, there he is. That kind of could go both ways with it, I guess you would say.
Now, here's a question that I'm going to ask you that I don't know if you've even thought of yet. Because this was one that after seeing it the second time, before I saw it the second time, I was like, did that happen? I don't think it did. How did you feel about not having a lightsaber battle in this movie?
It didn't really bother me because there was enough of the scene with Kylo and Rey fighting off those red guards. Like that to me was enough of a lightsaber battle. I know obviously the guards didn't have sabers, and then even the final scene with Luke and Kylo, I know that wasn't really a lightsaber battle, but that was enough to kind of gave me that Star Wars type of feel. So it didn't bother me, I guess I would say.
Okay, yeah, because that was it didn't bother me either. It was one of those things where it was Friday afternoon, and I was like, wait, did Luke and Kylo? They didn't. I don't think they didn't. Oh,
Yeah, it really was a different format this time around for sure.
And I haven't read anything about that or seen anything about that where people were like, "Where's my lightsaber battle?"
Yeah.
Even Luke Skywalker referred to them as laser swords, which I thought was kind of funny. Yeah, so I mean, overall, I would say this is, if you've listened to this episode this far and you haven't seen the movie yet, I'm assuming you're probably not that big of a Star Wars fan, or you're just overly busy, and then you completely ignored the fact when we said spoiler. Yeah, overall, like I said, if you've seen it one time and you're kind of like, I didn't really like that, or, there was a couple of things that really bugged me. And you're not the only one that thinks that there was a couple of things that bugged you, because there's a lot of people that think there was a couple of things that bugged them. But I'll just say it again, go see it a second time, because after the second time you see it, you'd be like, yep, that was a good movie.
I'm going to go ahead and give it a thumbs up too, because I really, really thought it was good.
Yep.
I enjoyed it. I mean, it's not without its flaws, but ultimately speaking, I did enjoy it.